All right, before we go here, we do have some non-finals related news. As the draft draws near next week on Thursday, it's starting to seem like the Pelicans potentially maybe would be considering trading our friend Zion Williamson. I think the initial reports were basically that the Pelicans were looking at moving into the 2-3 range with eyes on Scoot Henderson. I think part of that could be just that the Pelicans are looking at the new CBA and saying like, oh, we've got a lot of contracts stacked up here, especially after signing CJ McCollum to that extension, which I definitely panned as soon as it happened. And I've got receipts for that one as well. But how much of this is also, the fact that they are slowly and steadily getting pretty tired of the Zion experience. Where are you if you're in the Pelicans front office? So now you've downshifted from the Gucci to perhaps something more off the rack. Are you basically like, nah, I need to get rid of this guy, can't win with him, doesn't play? Or are you more worried that if we get rid of this guy and somehow he does play and becomes the player we all know he can be, like that is going to haunt us forever and we can't do that?
If I'm the Pelicans front office, I'm not getting off of Zion because he is head and shoulders the best player on my team. And I have him under contract. His extension hasn't even freaking kicked in yet. And so I'm not getting rid of that dude until I give this a couple more spins on the good old Wheel of Fortune. However, he's only head and shoulders the best player on my team when he actually plays. Availability being the best ability, all of those freaking stupid cliches and all of that. And so therefore, it's my belief as Woz, the podcaster, and not in my capacity as Griff's replacement, that he should be a trade candidate for that fact alone. He should be up for trade as a possibility on the merits. He hasn't played. He doesn't play. There's no indication that he's going to play. His off-court life, both conditionally what he's doing with his body and other things that he's doing with his body, are off the charts problematic, okay? And concerning. And so, yeah, like, you don't get the feeling that, again, not to bring it back to Jokic, but like, you hear these stories where he's doing these freaking ridiculously intense workouts after every game because it's just his routine. He thinks this is how he gets better. This is how he stays in shape. There's another guy who struggled with his fucking body. I'm watching this dude huff it up and down the freaking court in the most high-intensity games of the season. So it's like, what's anybody's excuse if I look at that dude and he can get his conditioning to that extent, and there's no indication that Zion is doing that. And then you hear about the management that's around him, and it's just like, I don't know. The reasons are piling up that you want to just get off the asset. But for me, I would personally be like, yo, the dude's extension hasn't kicked in yet. We've smartly put protections for ourselves within that contract. He's so easily our best player when he's out there, man. Like, it's not a 1-2 type of thing. He's the number one guy on the team. And there were moments this season where it looked like, yo, we could really compete with people. Justin Verrier even thought we were going to the finals. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man. Like, no, I'm not trading him if it's me, but I see the vision.
Well, Justin said anyone could beat the Nuggets. So, I mean, why not the Pelicans, too?
The Hornets, yeah. The G League Ignite.
I do love Woz, though.
Overtime elite.
Woz, I think you're right, though, to separate your capacity as podcaster versus general manager, because that's kind of where this conversation splits apart.
Yeah.
It's very easy for us to say you should trade Zion because he hasn't been available, because of the headache he creates by being unavailable, by all of the reports we hear about his habits and what he does. There's just a very tangible difference in being the guy who gave up on Zion Williamson, who is so clearly one of the most talented players in the NBA, and the way that could hang over you for basically the rest of your professional life if you bail on that experiment too early, which is why we see so often in situations like this one and others, teams will hold on pretty long until a player is basically out the door on their own grounds, for their own reasons, versus like preemptively dealing guys who are either unhappy or chronically injured or just like not even the best fits necessarily. It's very hard to bail on that kind of talent. And for that reason, I suspect these talks are a lot more exploratory in nature than they are like actually productive. I would still be very surprised if Zion ends up getting traded, but you have to entertain the possibility. You have to take those calls at this point, that's the demarcation point between Zion when he was drafted, Zion when he was first showing glimpses of what he could be in the NBA to now, is you have to take the call and you have to take it seriously and at least think about, with these other potential stars or picks or whatever that looks like that you could get in return, how do you not at least think about that when Zion isn't going to be available, at least hasn't been available for more than 30 or 40 games in some of these seasons?
So I'm going to regret this question as I'm asking it, not even as soon as I finish. But Woz, you mentioned something where you were concerned by Zion's off-court behavior. And I'm actually curious, like, how concerning is that actually? Because it's a question I've asked myself where it's like, how much of this is just like typical NBA tomcattery, tomfoolery, whatever you want to throw out there versus like this being an actual issue?
No, because for me, it's of a whole. It's not isolated. It's of a whole. It's like he's just not serious about professionalism. Like he doesn't carry himself like a professional, like the franchise cornerstone that he is in all aspects of this stuff. Okay. And so if this happened in isolation, I could chalk it up to a young man making a young man's mistake. God knows I've made plenty of them. But like all of these things feel like a guy who's getting bad advice constantly and who there is no accountability in his operation. And I mean, I'm not talking about how he is as a guy. Like, I'm sure he's a great dude. I'm sure he's like a nice, warm human being. I'm sure I would love to be buddies with Zion on a personal level, but on a professional level, he has not displayed the characteristics of a serious, professional-minded cat. And that just has not been the case.
That's not just with news like this. That's with the way his current and active teammates talk about him in terms of his professional habits and how seriously he takes his rehab, how much he's even around the team when he's out of the lineup versus he's just kind of parallel to it doing his thing.
When CJ took that little swipe at the end of the season, was just like, I'm playing. It's the playoffs. I'm in here. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I thought that was the rules.
Yeah.
I thought that was the code.
And by the way, CJ getting ripped for playing poorly while injured, because that's sometimes the way it goes.